right, my featured guest today is an Iranian-American rapper, songwriter, producer, podcaster, and the founder of the Paydar label. Take a listen to this.
به یاد یک، به یاد دو، به یاد بوسه به لبای تو، به یاد سه، به یاد چار، روزامون بازی بود به جای کار، به یاد پنج، به یاد شیش، به یاد اونی که کنارت نیست، به یاد هفت، به یاد هشت، به یاد وطنم که یادش هست. دهه 60، دهه ما، دهه جنگ بود و دهه دار، دهه تاریکی، دهه تار، ولی باز خوش بودیم بچگی‌ها. اولین عشق، اولین بار، اولین جدایی، اولین داغ، اولین مزه طعم شراب، تو راپله بودیم بود مملی بام، اولین جوین، اولین کام، رو جدول تقلید از تبلیغ گام، یا توی کوچه و یا روی پشتمون کابوس همسایه بغلیا. یادم پیچونم ماشین بابامو، یادم روندمش وسط کاج، یادم اولین دستگیریم تو پاسکا میزدن چونه به مبلغ باج، اولین عجل و نظام و صف، صبح تو مدرسه میزدیم یخ، خرسی و لاویز و مسخره بازی و میخندیدیم ما تو کلاس.
There you go. Little taste of a brand new song called Beyade, or In Memory Of, by my featured guest today in the Roqe Studio, Erfan Paydar. Erfan, as you may know, is one of the pioneers of Persian hip-hop and rap music. He was doing it when not so many were, mixing his experiences of growing up in America and Iran, and releasing 6 full albums so far, as well as dozens of singles. He's collaborated with artists from all across the spectrum of genres, like from Hamed Dikpeh to Farmaz Aslani to Sogan, just to name a few. Erfan has never been shy about expressing his views on political and social issues through his music. He's been outspoken about Iran since the Green Movement in 2009. And during the current uprising, Erfan has been using his platform to echo voices from inside the country and has actually been active organizing protests, speaking out, playing a leading role. He's been in Canada for concerts in Toronto and Montreal with his fellow artist G-Doll in the last couple of weeks. And right now, Erfan joins me in the Roqe Studio. Hello, sir.
Hello. Thanks for having me. We finally made it happen. We had a few back and forths, and finally.
Well, we've done this. We've done a lot of zooming, but
Exactly.
It's nice to actually have you here in the flesh.
It's different. I always say you never get the same vibe and same connection on Zoom as you would in person.
It's so true.
So,
although you're still wearing your shades,
oh, yeah.
so it's hard for me to engage with you with the deep eye contact.
Yeah, one sunny day in Toronto, I thought I should use my shades on the one day that I can.
Glorious sunny Toronto. So this song you just dropped. We just played a little of Beyade. Tell us about what the inspiration for this was.
The inspiration, actually, I was at my buddy Danny Asadi's house one night, and when I was driving home, I got this beat from a new producer, and I was just thinking about Iran. And let me give a quick background. A lot of people might not know this, but I have a very unique case growing up, preschool, elementary school, junior high school, and high school. All 4, I was in Iran, and I was in the United States.
Right.
So back and forth like a ping pong my whole life.
Right.
So I got a full taste of the Iranian culture, played with the toys that the kids did there. Same thing with America, same cartoons there, cartoons in America. So even though I lived a big part of my life outside of Iran, because of the way and I lived in Iran at an age where, your personality takes place and you have all your good memories and everything. Mm-hmm. So even though I would recognize the contrast of how things are here and in Iran, as far as freedom and just in school being mixed, like the gender apartheid in Iran, living in America really made me see it clearly what they don't have there. I always say sometimes people in Iran, they know they want freedom, but a lot of people, the majority, they've never experienced it, so they don't even know what they want. They just know this isn't it, But us, as people who lived in the free world, we know what it's like to live in a free society for the most part. So I was just thinking about this stuff, and all my good memories of my childhood, all the nostalgic moments started coming to me, and I just, kind of wrote the whole song on the way home, finished it the next day, and I wanted to package all of my childhood in one song. And I guess it resonates with everybody because everybody grew up in the same country and had the same experiences, watched the same
Not
TV
all
shows.
Positive experiences.
No, exactly.
Right. It's a mix. It's a blend.
Yeah.
Although, so first of all, you're so right about this. I mean, we're all hybrids. Anybody in the Iranian diaspora has some kind of mixed up, fucked up kind of like who am I existential crisis throughout their life. Mm-hmm. But you do have a unique case where you can literally empathize with a kid who grew up in America and a kid who grew up in Iran under the Islamic Republic, because
Exactly.
you've actually experienced both. One of the things that you said about this song in your little Instagram post about it a few days ago when you posted the song was, you said, I wanted people to realize, or some of my memories are that we were happy even though we knew we weren't living in the best circumstances, or something like that. Can you speak to that? Because that's an interesting juxtaposition that I think Iranians, especially those in Iran who are listening right now, face all the time. You know, the reality is this country that, you know, we keep talking about all the problems with, but you can't just go through your life being miserable. So you have to
Exactly.
find the happiness. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, the Iranian people, we always find a way to have a good time in some ways. A lot of times, you know, me and Jidal were watching old videos of Iran from the 80s, and I'm like, damn, there was tough times. The war was going on. There was nothing. And I remember sometimes even with food and stuff, they had coupon dashti, so you could go like buy chicken and stuff. Like I remember that stuff when I was 5 or 6. But we had a good time because life was
See,
more
I don't
simple.
even know what that is.
Yeah.
You had to get a coupon to buy chicken? What does that mean?
They called it coupon to Iran. So it's not like ticket. Basically, you have to have it was government subsidized food because there were shortages. So if you wanted to buy chicken or if you wanted to buy flour or rice, oftentimes there'd be long lines. And then, so we get a coupon.
Where do you get the coupon?
I don't remember. I just remember it existed. I was too young to remember.
Right,
but
right.
some from government, some
Right.
government.
It's
entity.
rationed, basically.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So you know, per each family gets to get this
right.
much and stuff like that. So, but either way, it was more simple times, and we had fun. Especially when you're a kid, you don't have to. You're living in the worst, like even living in Iran, until you get to an age and you realize what's really going on, and you have to deal with government entities, or you have to deal with like getting a job. And paying, having a family, and having high expenses, things are still good, And as you grow up and you go through adolescence and you start becoming an adult, that's when you realize how fucked up things really are, how difficult it is. And so I knew that just bringing up those memories, those nostalgic moments, people are gonna remember how our childhood was a more simple time, and we had,
It's
it was a better
interesting.
time.
Again, that juxtaposition of the happiness in an unhappy place, or however you want to state it. It's something that has somewhat come up in the last 7 months. Especially at the peak, let's say peak uprising, at least for now, which was say October, November. There was a lot of talk, as you know, in the diaspora of like, we shouldn't be playing concerts. We shouldn't be celebrating. We shouldn't, you didn't even want to take photos smiling. It felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But a few people, I thought quite poignantly, made the point that's not the case in Iran. If they want to party in Iran, if they want to, because you're inside the womb of all of that's happening, and if you need to find an escape to go to a party, good for you. Whereas in the West we have a different responsibility.
That's right.
Posting pictures. I'm at a gala. We already live in a place that's materially and socially freer and bigger and better and all of that. So does that resonate for you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And people tell me that sometimes, oh, you guys are on the other side of the world. What are you talking about? You're living, living free. And then, people here don't even care. They're partying. But it's not, these things, they're not so black and white. Yeah, maybe a lot of people are, and a lot of people aren't, And even if the majority of people are, that doesn't take the responsibility off of our shoulders, because we can protest here pretty much with no fear, not being worried about anything, and being their voice, because we know they can't, because we saw that how many people got arrested. We saw how many people got killed. How many people lost, they were shot in the eyes, all over their bodies. So that doesn't take away from our responsibility to continue.
The first time you were on this show 3 years ago, one of the things you said was, you said one of your missions was to speak to and for the youth of Iran. And at that point, you were talking about how you were worried that this is pre uprising. If anybody wants Erfan's credentials, you cared about the youth before the last 7 months. But you worried that the youth of Iran could be too passive these days, too inactive. You said at the time, it was almost like nihilism we've heard about with the youth of Iran. I'm guessing you've been inspired by young people in Iran in recent months.
Absolutely, because I remember when we were at the age of dahe 80, when we were their age, like, I don't know, 10, 12. Like I said, when you're younger, even if it's not Iran, let's say Kenya, in Africa, or like in the favelas of Brazil, when you have fun, you play.
Right.
You play with the ball. You don't have a ball, you play with a stick. You have a good time. As you start realizing what's going on around you, I remember living in Iran, we were so scared to say anything, to speak up at that time. It was really scary for us to, like, put Khamenei's picture on fire or something like that. That didn't exist at our time. Take off your hijab. But we get in trouble for wearing short sleeves, shirts, t-shirts. Anyways, so to see the level of bravery of these kids in the street, especially at that age, I get it, because you just have this ideals in mind, and again, you don't have a family. You're more, you take more risks because you have less to lose at that age. So seeing that, I knew a lot of them would get in trouble. I knew a lot of them would get in, jailed, killed, tortured. So I thought the best thing to do is just everybody needs to gather and everybody needs to participate, whether inside or outside of Iran. But
you've been at the forefront of, I don't know what you want to call it, revolutionary activism in the diaspora, not just through your music, but as I mentioned in the introduction, taking part in organizing demonstrations, speaking at them, posting political statements. How has that felt for you?
It felt like the right thing to do. But I'd be lying if I didn't say recently, because things have calmed down. At the same time, I really do think there's so much you can do if the people of Iran themselves aren't being active, So whether it's about the people that I've supported, sometimes I do get guilt trips. I'm like, shit, it's been 3 days. I haven't posted anything about Iran. Or it's been a week. I haven't thought about this and this person who's in jail. And I promised myself that I'm going to support them until the end.
But don't even go there yet. I'll come back to that. I'll come back to the, how you can manage this over time. But even just before we get to that, even just being the guy who's organizing an LA protest and speaking at it and really stepping out of being Erfan the musician to being some kind of, cultural, social statesman, what did that what has that felt like?
It felt like I'm stepping in the shoes that I've been wanting to for a long time, because like you said, I've been active with my music and on social media about the political stuff in Iran for about 20 years now, from the beginning of when I started my music. So seeing the people out there and the crowds, it made me feel like, because before it, I felt like, what am I doing? Am I just yelling in the wind? Am I having any effect? So when I saw that people are doing something, I'm like, no, I was right. This means something. And I have to step in their shoes and I have to step it up, and take it beyond just the music and just putting out songs. You could only put so many songs out, and that can have only so much effect. There's other things that I can get involved with. So I just felt like the right thing and felt I'm responsible for it.
And you're comfortable in that position. You don't feel like you don't have an imposter syndrome or something of who am I? Am I a political leader? What am I doing here?
The part that I guess I'd be uncomfortable with is saying something or siding with someone that I'm going to regret later. Because sometimes time is of the essence and you feel like I have to do something now. But then you're like, is it the right move? Because I've always tried to be someone who doesn't take any side other than the side of the people. So it's a big risk for me to all of a sudden, and people trust that. People know that about me. The people who follow me and trust me, they know that.
Although taking the side against the regime is not really that risky.
No, not against the regime. 100% against the regime. But I'm saying other opposition sides.
I want to get to that because that's an interesting thing that you've navigated. I don't know how you do it. But just before we leave the organizing demonstrations and stuff, I mean, you've been, notwithstanding your hybrid childhood and all that, you've been a California kid for a long time. And famously, there's a lot of Iranians in Southern California, but they've never particularly been all playing ball with each other. What was, say, that big rally that we saw in Los Angeles that you were part of organizing, that Shahzadeh ends up coming to and all of that? What was that just like for you as a California kid?
The experience of being there, in general, it was good.
Experience of seeing it. I know in Toronto, for me, as an Iranian in Toronto, there was a moment back in October when we were walking down Yonge Street. I've talked about it on the show before, where I've never felt more comfortable or more proud, where I was like, wow, I never even imagined this was ever going to be possible, that we could be walking down the main street of Toronto downtown saying we're Iranian in the thousands and having people clap for it. I mean, it was surreal, right?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you experienced something like that.
It felt so special because I made a point of, all of the protests they asked me to speak, and most of them, I wouldn't do it because I wanted to walk among the people, and I was worried about. I don't want to. Everybody gets caught up in their ego and the hype and photos and getting put here and there. I didn't want that. I wanted to be with the people. I just wanted to walk and feel like a normal person, over there, carry the flag. So that was really important to me. And also, I was very proud of the crowds. It felt special that everybody's here. They have shit to do. They have their regular lives. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them have no connection to Iran. They've never been to Iran. Mm-hmm. They don't know what it's like living in that country. But they're here just because they have Iranian blood. And at the same time, at times, I was thinking, LA has so many Iranians. I think over 500,000. So the crowds should be bigger. LA should have been the biggest crowd. Should have been bigger than Berlin. But it wasn't. So it's a mixed feeling. I was proud, and at the same time, I was disappointed at times.
I can't think of anyone, Erfan, that has been more outspoken about the situation of Toomaj Salehi. This is the Iranian rapper who's been in solitary confinement for months now. I can't think of anyone who's been more outspoken than you. He's a musician and a rapper like you, of course. But why has that case been so resonant for you? Why have you picked that up so, with so much energy?
As you were asking the question, 3 things popped into my head immediately. First thing, him being a rapper, and I'm a rapper, so there's a connection right there. And the fact that I sometimes explain this to American hip hop artists. I'm like, rap is illegal in Iran. And they're like, what do you mean it's illegal? A genre of music is illegal? I'm like, I know it sounds crazy. Right. And I realize how crazy it sounds as I'm saying it to you, because to us it's normal. Right. We're just used to it. So for him to get in trouble,
note
for
to
music,
badass American hip hop artists.
Yeah.
Think about how badass you have to be in a country where even the genre of what you're doing is not is not legal.
That's
right?
the real gangster shit to me.
Yeah.
Like Toomaj is the real gangster shit to me. Like it's not, you know what I mean? Like, so one time that side of being a rapper. The other part is how brave he was, and just seeing him, how active he was, being in the street, showing his face, and not stopping. And the third thing was that I didn't know too much until maybe a couple of months before his arrest. And I was pretty much talking to him every day or every other day on Instagram before he got arrested. And this kid knew. He didn't give a fuck.
You said this, one of your first posts about him after he was arrested. It was it actually made me cry, because you were rattled, and you were saying he knew this was going to happen, but he kept on going. Yeah. And he wasn't just talking on the internet. He was out there, in putting himself on the line physically, right?
He was changing locations all the time. And this is someone who's so deep in it, right? He's not just regular, someone who's activist. He's deep in it. He knows what they do to people who get arrested. He knows what happens to political prisoners. But he was out there in the street sending his posts, and he said, no matter what happens to me, keep going. And if that's not inspiring, I don't know what is. So when he got arrested, and I was connected to some people who know him and knew what he's going through. He's still in solitary confinement. I think it's been almost 180 days now, 170 some days.
How do we know that? I'm not doubting it, but how do we know where he is, or in what condition he's in prison?
I talked to people, his family members, and obviously his father knows. They know he's in solitary, and they know there's issues with his eyes, with his foot, and with
are they
one
able
of his
to communicate with him?
There have been visits. My information is limited, and also I don't want to say something that that could come out wrong. Yeah. But yes, but then he's been in solitary. He needs medical attention that he's not getting, and that's his situation. And what I was talking about earlier is kind of about Toomaj. Sometimes it's 2-3 days, 4 days goes by, and I haven't thought, because I promised myself a few months ago. I said there are a lot of people that are in jail right now, and if I focus on one person, I could probably do the most. I can't put 1,000 posts about different people. Right. So if I'm going to focus on Toomaj, on his 100th day of his arrest. That's what I was thinking. I'm going to do everything that I can for him, just get the word out, update people. But I get guilt. I get a guilty feeling. I'm telling you. Sometimes a few days goes by. I'm like, I haven't done anything for Toomaj. I haven't said anything. I haven't checked up on him. I haven't asked about him. What the fuck? You said you're gonna be there, and then kind of falls back into place. And it's a strange situation. I don't know what you think about it, but things get normalized. No matter how hard you try, things get normalized.
Listen, we were talking to the team on the show a couple of days ago that. How could imagine think about where the situation in Iran has gotten to, that the open and shameless poisoning of schoolgirls by the state is normalized. Like, that is so dark and twisted that, it is such a measure of how badly Iranians have been beaten up in the last 4 decades that they go, this is what these mullahs do. And, you kidding me? This is like, and they're not even, it's shamelessly like, we're going to poison schoolgirls for fear that they're going to be on the front lines of coming after us. I mean, it's madness. It's so dystopian that you almost wouldn't believe it if Margaret Atwood wrote it or somebody. You'd go, well, this is a bit of a stretch. It's crazy, and all of that is normalized. And Toomaj being normalized, all of that. After a while, that's part of the problem of where we're at, right? It's sort of like people going, well, this is the way it is. I mean, what can you? There's
what
only
are you gonna do?
How can you live in outrage 24/7, etc. Did the Toomaj? I thought about you and I thought about him, and I think. There's so many scenarios here, say with Mahsa Amini herself, or some of the young women in the beginning who were getting killed, and you would hear a young woman, like say one of our team members, go, "That could have been me." I would have been out there in the street with no hijab or something. Do you feel that way about Toomaj as a rapper? I mean, this could have been me.
Absolutely. Toomaj, another thing, I was born in Esfahan, and Toomaj, he's Bakhtiyari, but he lived in Esfahan. He's from Esfahan. So absolutely that could have been me.
Do you feel it's not fair for you to feel this way, but do you feel almost guilty that it isn't you? That you're here in a studio in Toronto? And
no, I don't. I honestly feel like it's a blessing that I'm in a position that I could say what I want to say and not get arrested, not get tortured. So that in turn pushes me to, okay, you have a responsibility. You have to keep going,
I want to talk about unity and disunity. And one of the proudest moments of unity I've felt is not disconnected from Toomaj. It's a weird one. It's like you'd think I'd be feeling the most sense of unity when there's a rally or something like that. It was, if you remember, and obviously you would, there was this forced confession video, Toomaj confessing, and for a split second that was on the internet, and then everybody said, don't share this, don't share it, it's bullshit, don't give it oxygen, don't put it out there. And no one did. Everybody was in line going, I mean, you can't even find it on the internet. That was the most amazing moment for me in terms of unity. How you get the Iranian diaspora to all agree to not share, sensational shit gets shared all that. That's what the internet is, right? It's if it bleeds, it leads, all of that.
Yeah.
That was an amazing moment, I thought.
It was. I remember waking up that morning, I saw that. Did you have a question, following up question, or just sharing that?
Thank you for asking whether there's a question. No, I just wanted to share that and see if you had the same sort of feeling about that. I mean, you were probably one of the people saying, don't share this.
It was. I was.
There was a certain sense of pride that didn't happen.
Yeah, definitely. And even there was question if that was him in the video or not. And some people who were close to him were asking me because his tattoo was different, his hair was different, he looked skinnier. So I shared that on Twitter, and now I believe that was wrong. My tweet was wrong. It was him. But I think that was beautiful that people cared that much. And then it's not just that the amount of comments and hashtags you would see, don't share this. People were so active. And that, like you said, that feeling of unity, that really we all felt as one in Iran, in America, in Europe, in Canada. Everybody was so involved, you know. And it's kind of sad to see that fire kind of hasn't died out, but you know.
Well, let me get to. By the way, I was
yeah.
smiling because I could tell you're A, a smart guy, and B, somebody who's done interviews. When you say, was there a question, or call me out on it? It's so great because so much of what I get so frustrated watching so many quote unquote interviews these days where somebody just makes a statement and expects the person to talk. You know?
Yeah.
And
I want to make sure I'm not rambling before.
I had a moment like that long ago. I was interviewing. There's a famous actor named Christopher Plummer. He died last.
Oh, okay.
He's a Canadian icon, and I was interviewing him, and I was kind of nervous, and I said something like, Romeo playing this role, or King Lear playing King Lear, it must be it's such an incredible responsibility, or something like that.
Yeah.
And there was this pause, and he said, after a while, he said, I'm still here. I haven't heard the question yet. I was just shamed, you know. I was like this young interviewer. Fuck,
that's so funny.
You know, Christopher Plummer hates me. Okay, so speaking of, we were talking about that question was about unity. I wanted to turn it around on the other hand and talk about the disunity, because Erfan, after some really hopeful moments of seeming like a large coalition of or group of opposition, so-called opposition figures, leaders were coming together in harmony, representing Iranians from outside Iran. There seems to be a devolving episode of this unity, and it's bickering, and it's different camps attacking each other. What first of all, what do you make of this whole situation of the so-called opposition leaders and people screaming at each other and saying, you know, you shouldn't be part of the coalition, he shouldn't be invited. Well, who are we representing? That guy's a mojahed. We don't want a king. All of this.
Well, I guess it'd be a bit of Monday morning quarterbacking, but I wish, first of all, they would have gone together a lot sooner. And I wish they could have put a better plan together that would rally everybody behind them. So I don't know. I don't think everybody rushed to kind of support the coalition that was created. Sorry. Can you repeat your question?
Well, my question is, it's, I almost don't want to say it out loud because I feel horrible saying, but it seems like it's fallen apart to a certain extent. That sense of unity, at least, of getting these figures together. I agree that moment existed a few months, maybe 3 or 4 months ago. Now it seems like I don't even know what's going on. I mean,
exactly.
Maybe we should just tell one person, you go and become our transition leader or something like that. I don't know what all this jockeying is about.
Right.
It's a disincentive to even go on the internet and see people arguing with each other and calling out each other as who's worse than the other and all of that. So I wanted to get, I mean, you're kind of, you're not just an observer, you're sort of in the thick of things as well, to a certain extent, as one of the voices. And I want to get your feeling about all of that.
Okay, so I did understand your question correctly, and what I meant to say is that time is always of the essence with these things, and I wish they would have gone together sooner. And right now, it's sad to see. I even put a video 3-4 months ago saying that these people are still in. They're still in prison. They're still getting tortured. Shit's still fucked up. And you guys are arguing about vekalat midam, nemidam, and this, that, Come together. And I see the interviews now coming up from the different opposition leaders. I see they go on this channel, that channel. And to be quite frank, I just don't think it's effective. I don't feel like it's doing much. If something needs to happen, things have to get reignited inside of Iran. Now, parallel to that, they should absolutely keep planning, keep doing what they're doing, the opposition leaders, right? So the next time the spark happens, they're ready. And they could take the position of leadership that they needed, because they needed a leader or a leadership coalition, whatever you might call it. But they need a sense of direction, I should say. That's not a leader. Okay, we're out in the streets. What's next? What's going to happen? What do we do next? Where do we go from this? Someone needs to help him out,
Well, I mean, when it comes to the opposition leaders, one thing that is kind of amazing about you, I said I want to come back to this, is I don't I don't remember you ever sort of endorsing anyone. I've seen you with different, you've done a live with one person and I've seen you with another and whatever. That's intentional, right? I mean,
it's intentional. It's intentional. And from the beginning of when I started doing political songs or talking, like, the past 15 years, I'm on the side of the people. I want to be an echo of their voices, just so they know, because I want to have that trust with my people. You know what I mean? Even though I've talked to Masi, I've talked to Shahzadeh, I've talked to different people, and I have respect for them all, separately on their own and what they do. I think they all have done a lot in their own way for the movement. But for me to kind of put all my chips on one person, no one gave me enough for me to feel like comfortable enough to do that. Now I have to talk about it more. I do believe Shahzadeh to be a good man, and I do think he probably has the good intentions for Iran. And I just like to see what the next step is.
Have they approached you, say Shahzadeh, and said, "Hey, can you come on our team and say something publicly?" Or
no, I've done some Zooms talking about sharing ideas, asking questions, and also giving ideas what can be done in the artist community and the activist community in general. I was at Nufti. I went to that event. So I support him in the sense that I think his heart is in the right place, and I do believe him to be a good man. And I 100% believe that his father and grandfather did a lot for Iran.
Well, if you're not aligned, then maybe you have some. What is your insight into? I mean, you said these people need to come together and come up with an agenda. They can't even come together,
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the people, as you know. It's also their followers. Sometimes
Sure.
they can be a little more
Absolutely.
enthusiastic than the people themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, what is your insight into why that's happening, and whether there's any way around this? Because otherwise, we're going to implode before we can actually help the people inside Iran, right?
Well, a big part of it is Farsi. They say kase azash dakhtar. So sometimes some of Shahzadeh's followers, when the coalition happened or certain moves happened, they start losing their minds, right? They got so angry with him, and people are so rigid. It all goes back to this in my mind. They're
Not just
so
his followers.
rigid.
Then you got other people
Yeah,
saying,
exactly,
I'll never be with the Pahlavis. And
Yeah.
you got somebody saying this guy's a mujahid. And,
Yeah.
it's...
I think as people in general, human beings, we have this tribal thing inside us that we feel like we have to belong to a specific tribe, defined. I think that gives people comfort, Man Saltanatiyam. I'm a Democrat. I'm a Republican. People can't and I've never been a part of that either. I can't say I'm Democrat about everything or I'm Republican. There's things you pick and choose, But I think people are tribal and they like that comfort of feeling I belong to a group. I belong to something. This is what we believe in. I'm going to fight for it. And also people are afraid of admitting to if they were wrong about something, I've been fighting for something for 5-10 years. This is me. I don't want to go back and feel stupid about myself. So I think that's a part of it too.
Let me try something out on you. I think maybe, especially given the diversity of Iranian opinions and the historical enmities between different opposition people, et cetera, I think maybe maybe it is too ambitious for a bunch of people to come together and have a detailed program. Maybe in the same way as you said, well, I can't represent everybody. I can't speak to everybody, so I'm going to pick Toomaj. But Toomaj is a symbol of a lot more. And that does have its downside, because I think there's people who could legitimately say, well, what about all the other people who've been in jail for longer or whatever,
Yeah.
But what I almost feel like if the opposition leaders, if those of us in the diaspora could focus on one thing, at a time. One big thing, like putting the IRGC on the terrorist list, for example, right? There's a lot of people who make a very compelling case to say the IRGC being put on the terrorist list and enforced by the EU, by Canada, by the US, etc., would cut off a lot of the revenue that's coming into Iran and would strangle the regime, right? That's why so many people have been arguing for it. For this guy at a hunger strike in London right now, Vahid Beheshti, you know, that's what this is all about, right? If the UK and the EU, and it occurs to me that putting the IRGC on the terrorist list really has nothing to do with the people inside Iran. Like, there's nothing some young woman in Tabriz can do today to put the IRGC on the terrorist list in UK. It's on us, right? It's on us in the diaspora to be able to. I feel like, you know, that's something that we should be trying to accomplish rather than debating who is going to be the foreign minister. or like, you know, it just seems so counterintuitive at this point. I mean, maybe I felt differently a few months ago. I don't know. Maybe I thought, oh yeah, good, let's come up with a whole plan. What's going to be the economic policy, etc. But that seems so pie in the sky right now. It's like maybe we should just get to the point where that we can, you know, create change in Iran first, or help the people in Iran, right?
Absolutely. I'm going to use the analogy of someone who's racist, or when they say two countries don't like each other, and then they get together and they realize 95% of everything that we do is the same, and we've been focusing on that 5%. So it's the same thing with the opposition. 95% of the things that they want is the same. We want this regime gone. We want freedom. And now, not to say sometimes that 5% could be very key important things that can have a big effect on the country.
Right.
But let's get it together, and then you speak, and the people will vote.
Right.
You know, that's what I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you disheartened by where things are at?
I don't want to say it. I don't want to say it. I go through it comes in waves, you know. Sometimes, like when the Saudi thing happened, that was very disheartening, you know. For example, because I just not because their relationship's good, but it got better. It was because I felt like it's gonna have a big effect on the movement. And it did. But it comes in waves, you know. Sometimes, I'll put it this way. I get my energy, a lot of it, from inside people inside Iran. Yeah, I'm still going to do my statements. I'm going to do my work. But that real feeling comes from inside of Iran, for me.
Tell me about what your personal governing philosophy is now in terms of how you're going to balance your time. Like, we've got to the point where we know you have to have some sort of resumption of normal life, quote unquote. You know, I see you posting pictures with your girlfriend, and like, this is okay. I'm home life, etc. It's not revolution 24/7. It can't be. Nobody can sustain that for, you know. You have to have that balance to stay strong, to bring your revolutionary chops when it's needed. But how are you? I mean, quite frankly, it seems to me with some folks, they just turn off the tap all of a sudden. It's like they went from like being, I don't know, you know, the revolutionary Che Guevara to now she's just like, you know, posting pictures of here's my new top and I'm going to, and it's kind of like, well, what happened? How are we? Is there balance? Is there some kind of in between? How do you sort of manage that?
I've given this a lot of thought. And I decided I'm going to do my regular life, which is my music side, which is, everybody has something, right? That's how I breathe. That's what I love in my life. I can't put it to the side, right? And I can't just make political songs, because that's fake to do that once. And you're going to run out of things to say. I've got multiple offers from different artists to do more political songs. And I said I would love to, and I will, but it has to be something different. I put 4 or 5 out in this past year, and you pull ideas out of the same box. You know, at some point it's going to be the same stuff. So I need to have a new concept. Anyways, so my decision is to. That's the passion that I love, and I also have to eat, right? I have another job other than music. I can't. You know, I have to pay rent, right? But parallel to that, I'm always going to keep fighting as best as I know, as best as I see fit, you know, and I think everybody should do that. I see a lot of people, like you said, that were never involved with politics. And I'm not saying it's necessarily bad. Maybe they needed to see what happened inside of Iran to bring those feelings out of them. Mm-hmm. But the night and day, I don't like it. I wish people would still kind of parallel to what they do, play a part.
Do you take solace in the fact that the goalposts have moved? Like, should we celebrate that Iran, as we say, it's become also almost a mantra, will never be the same. I mean, you can't go back to before 7 months ago in terms of the relationship with people inside Iran and the regime, in terms of the strength and power of women out there who are leading this, walking around without a hijab still right now, all of that. Do you take solace in that? Does that give you strength?
Definitely. I mentioned earlier that when we were kids, people weren't this brave. So kind of the same thing. The women, they're just walking without hijab all over the country now. Yeah. So like you said, it's moved the goalpost. And I feel like the revolution, somewhat, it's really important. It has to happen in people's minds first. There's a saying, and I think that's happened. So a lot more people believe that it's going to work and it's going to happen, and they're waiting for the next move, next spark.
Erfan, in an interview with Iran International recently, you said the only thing this regime understands is violence. What does that mean in terms of countering the regime? Do you ultimately believe this has to be some kind of violent insurrection?
Not necessarily. I think numbers. That's what I think, and I'm definitely not an expert. I love history. I've studied other revolutions.
Well, what did you mean by that?
Stuff.
The regime understands violence. When you said the only thing this regime understands is violence.
I said and how they act and their actions, and I said I think I was making a point about it's really important. I said they only understand violence and they move in silence, and I'm not trying to rhyme here. It just happened.
Can't help
yourself.
Yeah.
When there's when you don't give, let's talk about Toomaj specifically. I think being vocal about Toomaj and everybody, but so many people focused on Toomaj and were his voice, I think that really helped. I think there was a big chance that they might have killed him, executed him. So that's what I meant. And so they understand the language of violence, and that's how they act. They just like pressure and by force. That's how they've been leading this country for the past 43, 44 years. And the more vocal you are about things, as far as political prisoners specifically, the better the chance they have for survival.
Okay, so on that note, what are you hearing from people inside Iran about what they would want us to be doing in the diaspora? When you're talking to family members of people who are in prison, or what is it that we can, how is it that we can best use our energy?
The one thing that everybody says, and I have to give it some, I wanted to think about it, and I realized everybody just says the same thing: don't stop, keep going, keep being their voices, be our voices. If they're speaking about someone specifically, don't forget about so and so. Please be their voice. And if they're talking about generally, don't forget about us. Keep doing what you do.
What have you been most inspired by in the last 7 months? Is there a moment or something that where your mind goes when I say that?
Toomaj definitely is one of the most inspiring, and also the young girls and boys just standing up, and sometimes when I see stuff in schools, the videos, I get proud, but at the same time I get worried because they are kids. I remember when I was 14, I didn't know shit from shit, So, I mean, we have to be realistic about that. We don't. I never want a kid to just get inspired by other people and just go out there and not know what they're doing. I had family members after the last revolution. These girls that just were out in the street, they were 15, 16, and they spent 7 years in prison in Iran during the 80s. They were kids. They didn't know what they were doing. Right. So, anyways, I think a combination. It's everything is a combination for me. It's always a duality, right?
What's the most difficult moment, if I were to say, over the last 7 months and since this uprising began? I mean, there was a time when I remember in the fall when anyone I talked to, everybody was just saying, I just can't stop crying. I'm crying constantly. If I say what has been, I don't want to speak in past tense, what has been the most difficult moment so far? What would you say?
In general, I did a lot of crying too, right? There was a time that videos were coming out every 10 seconds, just refreshing. And so those times were really hard. The day that I heard, it was like 2, 3 in the morning. I heard Toomaj got arrested. My whole body froze. Just the thought of like, what are they gonna do to him? I guess I'm happy he's alive. The executions, actually, in general, executions.
Yeah,
those are the hardest.
Yeah, it's kind of madness, isn't it?
Yeah, especially because I was kind of talking to a lot of the family members of the few people that got executed, getting voice notes from a father who you know, the day after the son got executed, thanking me, and I don't know what they're thanking me for, you know, like, wow, almost like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's. What do you want to tell? I mean, I know you have your own platforms, but in case there are people who listen to this program inside Iran, we've got a big audience inside Iran when they can get it. What do you want to tell those inside Iran who are listening to us right now?
The most important thing I want to say to them is, because sometimes they feel the disconnect, don't think that we Iranians from outside of Iran. There's no such a thing. We Iranians, and I think one of the points that the song Beyade has, for example, is that I live in America. I've lived in America for years, but I'm Iranian. I grew up in that country. I know what it's like to live there. Moving from Iran 5 years, 10 years doesn't change anything. We still live under that regime. We know what it's like. And we care. And we lost something. The Iranians who live outside of Iran, we feel like we lost something. We lost our country. We lost our origin story. It's valuable to us. It's very important to us. It means something to us. So we want good times for you. We want to be able to return to Iran. We want a better Iran. We really care. We're not. People have lives. People have jobs. If you see them every weekend protesting, it's because they care. There's nothing in it other than that. So that's my message to you. I think we have to work together. You guys keep the hope alive. We'll try to do the same thing on this side and move forward and make change, real change.
Thanks for being here, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure to finally have you in the studio. More to come. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.